is going on, people? Welcome back to Double Clutch Auto Reviews, and thank you so much again for tuning in for another review video. My name is Mark, and today I'm here with the 2021 Ford Mustang EcoBoost, and this one has a 6-speed manual transmission. This Mustang EcoBoost was provided to me for the afternoon by Tasca Ford of Seekonk, located here at 200 Fall River Avenue in Seekonk, Massachusetts. If you live in the southern Massachusetts or Rhode Island area, come on down and check them out and see this Mustang for yourself, or one of their other 250 vehicles they have on their lot. These guys are also great to work with. I will put all of their contact information, including their website links, phone numbers, and address in the description below. So I wanted to drive an EcoBoost Mustang, specifically a manual transmission one, because I wanted to see how it stacked up against the GT or even the Shelby or other Mustang models. Is it really that bad comparatively? Let's dive in and check it out. The EcoBoost motor underneath this Mustang's hood is of course a 2.3-liter turbocharged inline 4-cylinder engine, making 310 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. Last time I checked, over 300 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque is a decent amount of power, am I right? It in fact is a lot of power, but the problem lies that there's the big brother to this car, the GT, that has the 5.0-liter Coyote V8 making 460 horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque. But I'm beginning to think that 150 more horsepower and 70 more pound-feet of torque is one of the only few differences between the EcoBoost and the GT. And granted, for a Mustang GT, you're going to be paying about $11,000 more on average across the board compared to an EcoBoost version of the Mustang that's the same tier of trim level. As far as the looks go, between the GT and the EcoBoost, they're pretty much the same. I mean, obviously, if you are a Mustang or car enthusiast in general, you will know that the 5.0 badges and the GT badge on the back give that away. There's also the fangs up front and the rear diffuser that signify the GT over the EcoBoost. But otherwise, the EcoBoost to the untrained eye just looks like a Mustang, and it still is a Mustang. It has all the nice body lines, the same angular, aggressive-looking headlights, the same front splitter, the same functional hood vents, the same widened fender flares in the back, giving it that nice thick stance, the same sloped roofline on the fastback. In other words, you don't really notice the differences unless you see the badges or hear the sound of the engine. All right, now climbing on into the 2021 Mustang EcoBoost. Now this is the base package of the Mustang, but we do have the optional 101A equipment package. So we have the bigger screen in the center. We also have the dual climate controls. I will say that credit card size screen that you're stuck with in the Mustang, if you don't get the 101A package, is absolutely pitiful though. I mean, come on, Ford, this is a 2021 vehicle. Are you serious? If you are looking for a Mustang EcoBoost, I would absolutely recommend that you do get a nice wheel and tire package that you're happy with, along with the 101A interior package. With that being said though, this is still the base model Mustang EcoBoost, and overall it's really not that bad of a place to spend time considering how much you're paying. I mean, these seats are cloth, but they're still well bolstered and they're comfortable enough for me, and I have to say, for what you're getting, you're spending around $30,000 for this car, and you get this not so bad of an interior at all, with a decent sound system, dual zone climate controls, traction control, boost gauge levels, all that stuff, and a turbocharged 4-cylinder with a 6-speed manual and rear-wheel drive for around 30 grand. It's not too bad. And I have to mention, I really like the gauge cluster. I like how the tachometer says revolutions per minute spelled out, along with the speedometer saying ground speed, as if anyone that cares about RPMs doesn't already know what RPM stands for, and as if we're going to be measuring any other speed than our ground speed. Just in case you want to jump your Mustang, you got to look at the airspeed speedometer instead of the ground speed one. Most of this interior is black plastic, unfortunately, but what do you expect? This is the base model. However, I will say we do have some aluminum looking touches around the air vents, around the gear shift boot, the gear lever, the knobs. I mean, they did their nice touches where they needed to. The steering wheel is leather wrapped, but it's kind of like a cheap feeling, fake leather almost. But like I said, for what you're paying, at least they put that there. There's also this kind of fake faux carbon fiber along the dash. I mean, I know that it's fake, but it still looks nice. I'm definitely a big fan though of the engine start stop button and all of these toggle switches for all the drive modes and whatnot. They feel nice, they have a nice click to them. And last but not least, I will mention the sound system in here. This is still the base model. This isn't the premium sound system, but it sounds pretty good. It has good bass, it sounds pretty crisp. I'm not gonna lie, Ford did a pretty good job with this interior overall, given how much you're paying and what platform you're getting. And now let's dive on into the trunk of the 2021 Mustang EcoBoost. You can open the trunk one of two ways. First way is you can push this button twice in the key fob. It pops and you just have to open it up the rest of the way. You can also push the small button right next to the steering wheel on the left-hand side. And once you have the trunk open, you can see that it's actually quite large, especially its depth and its width from side to side once you get in here. The only problem that I could see people having is this narrowness from top to bottom of the trunk. If you're trying to get a thicker item in there, you're going to have a tough time squeezing in between these two parts of the trunk. Other than that though, it is a quite practically large trunk for a two-door coupe with rear-wheel drive and a 6-speed manual. The only real gripe that I have about this trunk in the S550 chassis is that there's no grab handle here to pull the trunk down. This car is of course ebony black, so every little fingerprint is going to show on this paint. You have to basically take your hand and muscle this down with either two hands or a super strong grip on one hand to just kind of throw it down, and the struts are super stiff, so that's quite impractical. Basically, most people are just going to take their hand and put it on the paint and smudge it all up every single time. Come on, Ford, just put a little grab handle there. That would make it so much better. Now let's get down to business. Let's talk numbers. Of course, the biggest one is the MSRP. As I already said, the GT is about $11,000 more at base across the entire trim level range over an EcoBoost. The least expensive Mustang you can get, the EcoBoost with the 6-speed manual, starts at $27,500, and the premium version of the EcoBoost starts at $32,500. Correct me if I'm wrong, but for around $1,400 extra, you get the 10-speed automatic transmission if you want that. And the cheapest base version of the GT that you can get starts at $38,000. That's $5,500 more than the premium version of the EcoBoost. With that being said, if you want a nicer interior with all the creature comforts and the leather seats and whatnot, and you don't care about having a V8, you could save a lot of money getting an EcoBoost Premium over the bare bones GT. Convertible versions on all of the Mustang trims at an extra $5,500 also across the board. Right behind that is the second most important topic when regarding EcoBoost versus GT, is the fuel economy, of course. The ratings for the base model manual transmission trims of the EcoBoost and the GT are as such. The EcoBoost is 21 miles per gallon city, 29 miles per gallon on the highway, and 24 average miles per gallon overall. The Mustang GT is rated for 15 in the city, 24 on the highway, and 18 average overall. If you're looking for a Mustang as a daily driver, that can make a pretty big difference, especially with how gas prices are nowadays. Although I have heard people getting fantastic gas mileage in their Coyote V8 motors. I've heard of some people cruising on the highway, keeping their foot out of it. They get around 25 average miles per gallon. That is seriously impressive, but I'm sure that's more of a rarity, and especially if you're not hammering down on it all that much. I feel like with this, you can have a little bit more fun really romping on it more, but just saving a little bit down at the gas pump. Obviously, for many people, that's not important, especially when you're buying a Mustang. You want to get the big boy, the V8, but for some people, that makes a difference, and every little bit helps. Another thing that I have to point out that the EcoBoost does better than the GT is how it tips the scales. This is 100 pounds lighter than the GT. This weighs 3,636 pounds, and the GT weighs 3,730 pounds. So call it 94. And of course, all of that weight is right up front. So theoretically, this car is a lot less nose heavy compared to the GT. And lastly, we have to talk about one of the more crucial things that people tend to overlook quite a bit up until the moment they have to put this car on the road, that being insurance, of course. Depending on various different factors, including where you live, your age, your gender, your marital status, how much coverage you need, and your driving history, you can spend hundreds, if not potentially thousands of dollars more each year on insurance when you get a GT over an EcoBoost. Obviously, that all depends on all of those factors, so that's not cut and dry, but it's just something to mention, especially if you're a young male like me trying to insure a GT. I bet I'd pay a whole lot more than if I got this car. I'm guessing that Mustang customers should be expecting to pay around $15,000 more on average for a GT over an EcoBoost of the same trim level when you consider the MSRP initial cost and the cost to own over a few years when you consider all of those factors. One last thing before we take this Mustang EcoBoost out on the road for a rip, I'd like to talk about tunability. The fact that this is a inline 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that comes from the factory, you don't have to do much to wake these cars up. A simple cold air intake, exhaust on a good tune can make a world of difference on this engine. I've heard of people that have done those 3 simple mods. Sure, it costs a couple of $1,000 to do it right, but they end up making over 400 wheel horsepower at that setup. That's not bad at all. This EcoBoost is relatively all stock. There's not that much done to it except for a muffler and resonator delete. But I will say it does sound pretty good for a turbo 4-cylinder. I'll do a couple of revs now. Take a listen. And I will say, when you do get those mods done, either an intake or an exhaust, of course you get all the pops and bangs that everyone loves. If you're not going to be jealous of the V8 owners with the lovely grunt of that naturally aspirated V8, or you don't mind the sound of the turbo 4-cylinder, or in fact you like it, the EcoBoost Mustang is a fantastic bang for your buck car, especially one with a manual transmission, and that's why I wanted to review this one. I've driven a 10-speed automatic before, and that's fine, especially if you need an automatic or you want that. However, I truly think that the 6-speed manual transmission in this platform allows it to truly shine. You can also very easily wake up the Coyote motors. I totally get that. If you put a little bit of money into those can make huge power numbers, truly. However, just because this is a turbo 4-cylinder doesn't mean that the modification potential isn't there. There's also a decent amount of aftermarket support on this chassis as well, now that this has been out for a couple of years. So if you think you're going to be missing out on what you can do to your EcoBoost Mustang over a GT, that's just not the case. There's a lot that you can do to this car if you want to modify it. Alrighty guys, now getting behind the wheel of the 2021 EcoBoost. Before we get really going, we're going to turn traction control off. We're going to put the steering in sport, and we're going to put it in track drive mode. So how I'm feeling it, what seems to be, is the boost really kicks in at around 3,500 RPMs, but then the torque curve kind of dies off later on in the power band, unfortunately. And as far as the sound goes, obviously it's no V8. Naturally aspirated, turbocharged, supercharged, whatever you want to swing it, it doesn't compare. But it does sound kind of fun, I will say. With the muffler delete, I mean, it's entertaining. I don't want to necessarily say it's glorious sounding, but it's fun. Especially for a car enthusiast too, you get a lot of turbo whistle and even get the pops and bangs when you really rev it out. I mean, it's fun. Rev matching is relatively easy when downshifting, at least from 3rd to 2nd. It takes a little bit of getting used to. You just really have to give the throttle a good flap. But once you do it, rev matches nicely. The transmission feels slick, shifts smoothly, clutch is easy to manage. I mean, like I'm doing right now, downshifting and rev matching, it's fun. It's a little hoon machine. You know, I'm going to say, I think this is actually boost by gear. What that means, boost kicks on around different RPMs in different gears. I think in 2nd, it hits around 3,500, and in 3rd, it's around 4,000. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'm feeling right now. So even with the steering in sport and the drive mode in track, there's about maybe a ½ inch of on-center dead spot when I move the steering wheel back and forth. There's a little bit of play right there. It's not much, but it's just enough where you feel it. We can throw it into comfort now since we are behind some traffic. I'm gonna put the mode in normal and the steering feel in comfort. And wow, the steering lightens up quite a bit, I will say. All right, let's put it back in track mode. Enough of this comfort. Who needs that? Woo! There's a little bit of delay with that turbo lag, with the throttle response, but man, is this thing still a lot of fun to rip around. That was a 1st gear pull from like 2 miles an hour. All right, full throttle dig from the stop. Ready, go. It is not the best handling car I've been in. Like, I feel like the car overall is pretty composed and predictable. I don't feel scared at all when I'm ripping through a corner in this thing. It is a little bit on like the clunky and lumbery side as far as like the feedback from the road goes and the steering feel. I mean, it's no Miata. You just have to keep in mind that this is not going to be nearly as refined as the Mustang GT, the other performance trims that the Mustang come with, or even just more expensive sports cars in general. You're just not going to have that refinement. I just drove an R35 GTR, and that thing is just so refined, so fast, and it just takes you for a ride. And it's a lot of fun, but you honestly just don't feel like you're really working for it and doing something when you're driving. You're just flooring it, and it takes you along for the ride. This, you actually feel like you're doing something, you're working for it, and you're just like manhandling this Mustang all over the place, and that's the pleasure you get from this. Yeah, when you get going, this does have speed sensing steering, and when you're at higher speeds, the weight of the steering really stiffens up, and it feels nice when you're going into a corner at higher speed. Like right now, oh yeah, yep. Also, the brakes are super grabby. Like, I jumped in this thing and I wasn't used to that, and it's like, damn, like these things grab. I think this is a great option for a budget build or a young enthusiast that wants a fun car that's not gonna break the bank, that they can also tune, modify, and have a fun time with, really. It's like an efficient, economical, fun time. I'll put that in quotes, at least when comparing it directly to the Mustang GT. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed my little review video of this 2021 Mustang EcoBoost. Thank you so much to Tasca Ford for allowing me to take it out for the whole afternoon. If you want to check them out, I will put all of their contact information, website links, and phone numbers in the description below. Take care, y'all. Stay safe out there, and I'll see y'all in the next review. Peace.